Hey, what's up? This is Liam from the Cancer Bats, and you're listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour, your source for all hard rock, heavy metal, new metal, alternative, punk, horror punk, hardcore, rock, and all local bands, with your host, John the Bod, a.k.a. the Bodfather.
Hey everybody, welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour. I'm your host, John the Bod, a.k.a. the Bodfather, and as always, I'm bringing you guys awesome interviews, and today it is an honor and a huge privilege to have Mr. Liam Cormier, vocalist of Cancer Bats. Oh, I said his last name right. How about that? Check that out, folks. And
yeah, getting your French on.
That's right, get my French on. No French onion dip either. There we go. They've got a new album that's out called The Spark That Moves, is out now now I hope this is right, New Damage Records and Bat Skull Records, is that right?
Yeah, it's basically, the two of us working together.
And now this is the follow-up, guys, to 2015's album Searching for Zero Out. So they did not disappoint, and we're going to get right into this. So Liam, welcome to the show, man. Glad to have you on here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So,
what's impressed you the most about making the new album, The Spark That Moves? What's caught your eye about, if anything, dude? If anything at all?
I think for us, just kind of the most surprising thing, or the best part about it, was kind of just the fun that we had with it. It was kind of getting back to just why you start a band in the first place, and why you jam with your buddies. It felt like a lot of this record was less us feeling under the gun from a label or anyone, because we didn't have a label or management or anything. We just made this record ourselves. And I think was kind of getting back to, why you even play music in the first place, or why we want to play heavy music, especially, is, just because that's the thing that makes sense to you, and that was kind of the most, surprising part of the record. And I think why it sounds so fresh is because we had, none of those kind of preconceived, oh, we need to sell X and people have invested this much so far, so we need to try and make it work. And, they want to try and push radio. We were just nope, we're just 4 dudes trying to make some tunes that we're stoked on. And, and surprisingly, it's just oh, this is such a ripper of a record as a result, because we weren't doing it for anybody other than ourselves and Cancer Bats fans.
And like I said before the interview, you guys did an awesome fucking job on this, man. It's really good and it's fresh. And another thing about you guys, you're not pumping stuff out every 2 to 3 weeks, it seems like.
Oh, no, definitely. Our work capacity is way under that. Even in writing this, we managed to get 12 songs finished. And I was there was a point when we had 10, and I was 10's good. I was you only need 10 songs for a record. Who cares? There's no rules. We can just do it. And everyone was no, we should probably write a couple more. I was all right, fill your boots.
Oh, that's awesome. Any songs off this album that stand out more to you than any on it as of right now? I mean, I know these change from day to day, and these picking your favorite collectible, but do any stand out for you personally?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few that I think are cool, because it's it's ideas that we've started to work on in the past, and I think we weren't at a kind of level. I know for me, vocally, I wasn't at a level singing-wise that I could kind of pull some of these things off. Mm-hmm. So I think about songs like Space and Time, and even Brightest Days, having a bit more of a melodic kind of chorus that doesn't sound like I'm putting on a voice, that sounds natural. For me, a song like Space and Time has all these different voices that I'm now strong enough to actually pull off and not make it sound like I'm just a cartoon, trying to oh, this would be the scary guy. It's to me, it now sounds like my voice just actually working the way I've always wanted it to. So those are some of the tracks that I'm really pumped on. I think because it's just oh, there's no cringe element where you're I sing this so much better now that we've been on tour, or it's just
yeah.
I'm really pumped on how it worked out.
Oh, and I'm sure there's old stuff that you go back and listen to and you cringe and go, what the hell was I thinking?
Oh man, there's first album stuff where I can, I hear that my voice is tired, and you hear some of the ideas that you're starting to work on in the studio, mm-hmm. and it's you know, I think there's a certain thing with vocals, especially, and maybe it has to do with guitar and drums. Like, I don't know, but I just know that there's that point that your voice gets to once you're like 10 years deep. And I've had that told to me by like so many guys, like, you know, Keith Buckley, you know, tons of like guys that we tour with who were just like, man, once you hit like year 10, like Dave Brocky, when we were on tour with Guar, he was like, dude, once you hit year 10, he's like, you're unstoppable. And I was just like, what? No, I feel like I've been singing for so long, like blah, blah, blah. And then you like just pass that and you're like, oh no, they're all right. Yeah. Year 10 is way different.
How was working with producer JP Peters on this? And he's a familiar face with you guys, right?
This is my first time meeting him. Some of the other guys had worked with him before in other projects. For me, it was really cool because JP was the first, and I don't know if a lot of producers are like this, but he was the first guy that I had ever met that was very conscious of where his album was going to sit within the discography. And he wasn't looking at it in a way to be like, I need to make the standout Cancer Bats record that everyone remembers JP Peters for. He was like, we need to make the album that makes sense in the order of album number 6. And so he was like, we can't forget about what you've done with every other record before this, which I thought was so unique of like a producer to kind of have that perspective, to be like, oh, I need to work within your universe, you know, and not just be on my own kind of like signature. So I really got into that idea and those conversations that we had of like, how important is this within, you know, like the set list that will become the Cancer Bats tour, and like within the record collection that is that of the Cancer Bats fan. And I was like, oh, that's such like a rad perspective. And for me, like having known that he worked on the last 2 Propaganda records, it was like, oh, I can kind of hear that as well. Like where you're very like respectful of what's come before you in terms of like working with bands. So it was really cool to have that perspective. And I think we're really lucky to work with someone like that on album number 6.
Oh yeah, definitely. You want a producer that's going to be all about the band and not like, well, like you just said, where's this going to sit? Not with JP Peters, but as where it's going to sit for the band. That's what you want, man. That's what you want. And you know, did he push you hard, Liam, to get extra vocals out of you, or let's talk about that a little bit?
I think like he did, but at the same time, he was just like, he was more producing through like the conversation, you know? So he would always kind of just be like posing the questions to everybody. Like, are you cool with this? Like, is this what you're like, what do you think we could do? Like, is there anything else you want to try? What have you done in the past? You know, and like kind of getting everyone to arrive at those conclusions themselves. Because if you did have an answer of just like, no, this is sick, I'm stoked, he's like, okay, cool, we got tons of stuff to do, like, let's move on, you know? Or at the same time, I'd be like, no, I think I could sing like a really high part over top of this, and then we'd sing that, and I'd be like, I think I could do like a crazy low, and he'd be like, yeah, let's go for it. Like, and he'll help you to get there and get the best performance, but at the same time, he's very much like, well, where do you want it to be? Where does everybody else in the band want it to be? And not so much like he has his own standard. He just wants to do whatever's right for the project.
Jedi mind tricks is what he used on you. Yes, he did.
Yeah, which I think is cool. It was like, yeah, it's like a neat way of doing it.
You guys had been working on the album since 2017. Did it seem difficult at times while on the road working on this at all?
Not so much, only because we had like no deadline. I think until I set the idea in motion that we were gonna release the surprise album along with the 10-year Hail, and that like we kind of only came to the conclusion maybe halfway through the year. So it was pretty like open and just like, yeah, I guess we should, because that's what, you know, what everybody's feeling. But we didn't have a label, we didn't have any like interest or anything, so it was kind of like really stress free in a lot of those ways. And maybe because we're kind of just like, well, I don't know, let's see what happens, like let's let these songs kind of dictate how serious we'll take this, because if we couldn't write anything, then there's no point in doing an album. Sure. You know. Yeah. So it was sort of like, well, I'm not going to like go and find a label if we don't have anything worthy of putting or bringing to them. So it was kind of cool, like being in that situation. Cause not like we were like, oh, well, we better put on this pressure. It was like, yeah, let's see what happens. And like, if people are interested, and luckily there was a lot of like fans that I think like motivated it more than anybody. So when we were all just kind of like hanging out, doing our own things, we kept running into people who were just like, when's their new record? Like, the last record's sick. I want it, like, DSOL is like my favorite album. Like, I want to hear something new. And you'd be like, oh, okay. Yeah, I should go book band practice. Or like, yeah, I should finish working on that song. And it was like, I'd be just hanging out with like people at like motorcycle events, like not even at shows. And it would be like some old biker dude who like recently got into the band, or it'd be like some kid that I met who's just like Cancer Bad super fan. And it was really cool to like have these interactions just kind of like, you know, naturally as we were just living our lives, and that being more of the like motivation. Or when we were out with like Bat Sabbath, like we're obviously like playing some Sabbath covers, and then people are like, what's going on with the new record? And you're like, I don't know. And they're like, oh, I really want something. And you're like, oh, okay, well, at least know you want something. You know, and so it kind of took out some of the like the guesswork of like, man, I really hope this record's like going to do okay. And I was like, well, I just talked to like 2,000 people over the last year, and they're all really pumped. So I know we could at least sell 2,000 of them.
I know you guys didn't plan this album release. Is this something that you guys may do more in the future, just surprise drops like this? Because it looks like it's went over pretty well, if you ask me.
Yeah, it's definitely done great. And it's kind of built our confidence about even just like doing a label ourselves and kind of doing things a little bit different. But it does make us want to like, yeah, just kind of keep rolling with that idea to just be like, oh, who's to say like we don't get stoked and write a couple more songs and put out a 7-inch at some point? Or, you know, like just kind of, again, like the fun side of it where you're just like, oh, maybe we'll do a split with somebody because that's really fun. Like, we should just do whatever is cool. Or maybe we get busy and we don't do anything for a while. Like, who knows? But I like that there's nobody else who's like kind of invested in it to then be like, hey, you guys really like need to do this because I need to earn X, Y, Z. And we're like, oh, well, we're just going to do whatever because we're just having fun. And we don't owe anyone anything. So it's pretty awesome.
And that's what it should be. You shouldn't owe anybody.
Exactly.
You know, it's your damn music.
But I do understand. And I mean, we've been really fortunate to work with some amazing labels along the way that have helped us out to be in this position now. So I think that's the one thing that I never want to take for granted is that, like, you know, we've worked with a lot of cool people, and like labels like, you know, Good Fight and Metal Blade have like helped like really push the band to a certain point that we're even known enough that we can put an album out into the universe. But at the same time, we don't need to like, you know, like bug those dudes. They can just like put out their records and we'll just put out ours and we can all hang out.
Do you do anything differently during the writing and recording process to help keep your mind fresh and open to not let the music get stale and not go down a same path before or to repeat yourself? Do you do anything differently possibly?
I don't know. I feel like we were more just trying to focus on all the positive of like what we've done in the past that's worked was like our whole thing. And I think, again, like really trying to like vibe on that and focus on that this time around to just be like, okay, everything that was good about like recording and writing and past albums, let's just inject all of that into this record and really just like meditate on those ideas and less of like, oh, this is what was negative, so I should try and fix it. It's like, oh no, this is like what was positive that I really liked, so we'll just focus on that. You know, if that makes sense?
Mm-hmm. In your own opinion, Liam, what can fans expect at a show from the Mighty Cancer Bats who have not got to see you guys live yet?
I guess just like, yeah, a gnarly party. I feel like now we're pretty road hardened and like, you know, we're good at what we do. So I think people are now like, if you've never seen Cancer Bats before, we're definitely like on our game. Whereas I realize a lot of people who probably saw us in like 2006 when we were on tour with like Alexis on Fire and haven't seen us for like 12 years, you know, we're probably going to see a completely different band as far as like, you know, what we're doing then and now, especially in the States. But yeah, if you come up to Canada, oh man, we'll blow your socks off.
Now, I know we're living in the digital era of recording albums and plus social media to get things out quicker and plus, you know, especially get out to more fans. Do you like that we're living in this era right now, possibly?
Yeah, I mean, I'm super stoked. I think for us, like, we've always been a pretty, like, digital band, even though things have just been evolving. But, like, when we put out Hail Destroyer 10 years ago, I feel like that was the height of, like, people stealing records off the internet. So, I mean, that album was super successful only because everyone just, like, shared it and streamed it and stole it. And that was great for us as a band. And that was why we've kind of were or have been as successful as we have, even though that record, if you look at the numbers, is literally like the lowest selling album we've ever put out. But it was just like this time and place when like the internet was killing it. So, I mean, I definitely can't complain about that. And now fast forward, it's like, it's really rad to have everyone, you know, streaming music through Spotify and, you know, Apple Music and Deezer and all those different kind of platforms, Bandcamp and all that stuff. And to kind of be like, oh, okay, well, the system's figured out, but it's still as accessible as it kind of was before. And then now we're able to, you know, just as easily put out a record on our own, but they've figured out how to kind of help everybody out in the system, because records still cost money to make is the only downside. But so you at least have a way to kind of like balance it out a bit.
What does Cancer Bats bring to the table for music that's not out there as of right now? Not knocking anybody else. I'm just saying, what does this band specifically bring to the table, possibly?
I don't know. I guess just like a healthy mix of punk rock and stoner. I mean, that was kind of like why we started the band in the first place, is we were like, man, there isn't enough stuff that sounds like a mix of like, you know, hardcore, like, and like I Hate God and Down and all these like kind of southern bands that we were super into, like Acid Bath and all this stuff. And we were like, but that has like kind of like a good hardcore mix to it. And we were like, I guess that's still sort of what we're going for, because I don't feel like there's a lot of bands that sound like us.
Acid Bath is pretty damn awesome.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. I mean, it's eerie, but it's so good.
Yeah. Yeah. And bands like Buzz Oven and like Entombed and stuff like that we were just like, oh, we just really like these bands. But I feel like there isn't that much of in Canada at the time, like death and roll. And I feel like even now it's like, I don't find there's a lot of bands that are doing that kind of stuff, which is cool.
Support wise, is there a country or a region that stands out more, even surprises you, that you guys get support from that area, Liam?
We've really been welcomed into the UK scene. I mean, that not being, you know, the obvious spot for a Canadian band to go and find like a real like assimilation, I guess. But we were welcomed with like open arms into the UK, where their shows are like, all of our shows there are twice as big, and we're kind of like, yeah, everything has been crazy over there. So it's definitely really awesome to just think of like, I don't know, a Canadian hardcore band that started going over there a bunch and like all of a sudden got into like magazines and were being played on the radio. So stuff like that is definitely crazy for us.
What made you want to become a musician? What was that spark for you that said, yeah, that's what I want to do right there?
I don't know. I feel like even as like a little kid, I like wanted to play music and be a performer and be in a band. Like it was definitely something that I've always kind of been drawn towards. And whether it was like when I was like really young in school, like being in like, you know, like not even like high school, like grade school, like plays and musicals and stuff, and just being like stoked to like perform and goof around. It's like, oh, I definitely like I've always been drawn towards it.
Any show or moment that stands out to you more possibly that you can recall being part of, Cancer Bats, that, you know, you're like, I can't believe we're doing this?
Oh, man, I don't know. I think anytime we've been like, we'll play like a big festival, like I always feel like really like, again, because we just think of ourselves as like being a hardcore band. Mm-hmm. And then you're someplace in Europe or you're in Australia or you're somewhere and there's like thousands of people watching your band. And you're like, oh, this is crazy. Like when you like, it's like a number of people that you don't even recognize. Mm-hmm. And then someone from like the festival is like, oh, that was a great set. There's 35,000 people watching you. And you're like, what? Like that doesn't even, it's like, it doesn't even make sense to me. It's bigger than like towns we play, you know? And you're just like, this is insane. So like though that sort of side of things, like I always think of like when we play Download Festival or something, and there's like a huge crowd, and you're just like, this doesn't even make sense. Like that this many people like want to just watch our band for 45 minutes, but it's definitely amazing.
Now I know you guys get this, you've had to, but what's it mean to you when you receive an email from a fan, or prior to the shows or after the shows, they tell you that Cancer Bat's music has pulled him through a bad experience, gave them inspiration just to overcome obstacles, or just a swift kicking ass to overcome something, or just let them get away from the everyday bullshit that we go through just to listen to the music? What's that mean to you?
Oh, it's the best. And I think, like, again, you were talking about like the internet and kind of social media. Like, I love that things have become so connected. Like when we were just in the UK, I was getting messages the next day from people and them telling me, you know, like how important the show was to them and how they've been going through a rough time. Or one girl was saying she was so empowered from being, I like pulled her up on stage to come and sing the end of Pneumonia Hawk. And she was saying that she was so empowered from that. The next day, it like, you know, she just like felt so much like stronger and able to like take on all these things, like, you know, like it work, and like, it just like had such an effect. And you're just like, that's so wicked. You know what I mean? Cause you're just like, I love that there's now this like dialogue that we can have so easily, like outside of just like playing a show. Cause to me, I was just like, oh, that was super fun. Like that was rad. And then to hear back from them the next day that it like translated in such a bigger way than you even thought, that you're just like, oh, this is sick. And even more so like just having put out a new record and people are already like gravitating towards it. Like, oh, this like Brightest Days is already like helping me out so much. Like this is such like an awesome jam for me to like get pumped up. Like, man, this is so sick. So I definitely feel like really thankful for that.
Yeah, you don't realize how much music can affect somebody via a, you know, just a inspirational tool or just something that speaks for them, you know? It's so fucking awesome. Just, you know, I've had albums that's done that for me, that spoke for me, the stuff that I've went through. And just, you know, thank you guys for your music, man, first and foremost, as a fan, truthfully.
No, I appreciate it. And I guess that's the thing that I always think of is like, for me as a fan, like I know there's been such like huge records that have helped me through things and like that have been a huge part of my life. So it's like, oh, only natural that you would assume. But it's just nice to know that when you put that effort into like your own band and you work really hard on some songs, that people will get that same sort of thing out of it.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, Rats by you guys is, like I said, that's my kick-ass anthem.
Oh, that rules. We started playing that one live again, so.
Good. Rats. I love that. That's, you know, that to me is a kick-ass song, and if you can't get up to that one and rock out to that, there's something badly wrong with you. That's for sure. Liam, how can folks stay in touch with you guys, buy some merchandise, tour dates, buy this new album that's out, or the old albums? How can they do that? Just
cancerbats.com, or, you know, Facebook. Everything Cancer Bats just leads back to us. So
before I let you go, good sir, would you care to do a promo for my show?
Yeah, for sure. Hey, what's up? This is Liam from the Cancer Bats, and you're listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Everybody stick around. We got some great music coming up, and you only hear these interviews right here on BODS Mayhem Hour and BODS Mayhem Radio Network. Thank you so much, Liam.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show, man. I appreciate it.
That's when I take